So welcome to Spiritual Conversations, and today's topic is what's the value of prayer, and delighted to be joined with Vin and Pete and Kathleen. These beautiful people, I've been fortunate enough to experience their work in other ways. I tuned into a lab last week and met Pete for the first time that way, so it's terrific, and people who have joined us on the side. And I'm hoping the other people who have been a little bit sidetracked by the change of channel will find their way here. I'm sure if it's meant to be, you'll be directed here. So the topic today is what's the value of prayer? And I know that spiritual conversations have been occurring in different labs under different topics. And specifically, we're directing our attention to prayer today and the benefits or otherwise. I actually put it out on my Facebook channel prior to this because I thought it will be good to see what people's reactions are. And I might just kickstart it by reading you a couple of responses. One's a beautiful response from Kathleen, knows this beautiful lady, Simone. And Simone wrote back, prayer work for me on a personal level I can only describe as a connection, an inner knowing, a belief that what I am needing, asking for or putting out there to what I believe is a higher power will be addressed, answered, listened to or given clear direction. My prayer work is never formal. It's never planned or at a certain time or place. It is when I feel it's needed for myself or for others. And Simone does some beautiful healing work I've been a fortunate recipient of her beautiful work. Prayer is a powerful communication to a deep inner knowing that your needs, troubles or cares are met on a very soulful level. I can honestly and truthfully say that through some dark days, the power of prayer to Jesus and Mother Mary gave me the strength, courage, support, and love by inviting this energy and light into my heart, my home. It gave me purpose and the strength to get through the situation at hand. Because I'm highly intuitive, I was able to listen and deeply connect and trust that things would be okay. Prayer restores faith and it comforts the soul. So beautiful. That was, yeah. That's our Simone, and she put that on my professional page on quite publicly, obviously, on Facebook. So I have no hesitation in reading her response. So let's move around the room. And okay, Pete, you're the one I know least out of this group, so I'll pick on you.
I love it. Well, first I'll say that. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say Archangel Sandalphon is the one that is really what's called the ear of God. So he is one of the tallest archangels. He's actually one of the only two that was in human form. He was Elijah in the Bible. So what he does for us is he's able to take our prayers that we have, from us up to God, and that he's really helpful at times when we really don't feel like we're in that joy state where we really have that connection with Spirit. So he's a really great way to really transport our prayers from ourselves to God. I think a couple of really important things about prayer is to understand that the first time you ask, when you go to a restaurant, you order one time, and then from that point you proclaim in faith. Because if you keep asking in the asking state more than once for something, that means that you really have a sense of lack and you don't think it's coming to you. You either think that God is powerless or you think that you don't have the self-worth to bring it forth. So make sure that when you're in prayer, the first time you ask, and then from that point forward, you're proclaiming it in faith as already being here, because it really already is. It's about us allowing it to be revealed to us. And I would say that I am constantly, what I would say, the state of prayer. The state of prayer could be as formal or as informal as you want to make it. It could be to any energy that you feel of that comes from light and love. I love that one particular prayer talked about the Mother Mary and Jesus. So, for me, I'm very interdenominational, whether it's fairies or angels or Jesus or God or the universe or spirit or Mary or, Buddha or Allah or Muhammad, as long as it's a light and love, I think it's fully acceptable. It's whatever your connection is. So I guess that's what I would say about prayer right off the bat.
Thanks. Yeah. A question here from,
yes, Metatron is his
brother.
What's
her name?
Yeah. Right. Yes, that's right.
Helen, isn't it? Helen.
He was Enoch in the Bible. That's right.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. And Helen said that prayer has many names. And what are some of the names in prayer that we would substitute for prayer?
Supplication, maybe. Or I would say calling forth, because, actually God called forth with his words, the universe and all that there is. And we're told actually in Psalms that we are God. So it's really the same thing for us to know that our words have power. What we speak forth with our words and what we believe and what we expect and what we know, that's actually what's being projected forth. So for people to start becoming mindful about really how powerful we are in this time of expansion. Yeah.
And as Helen says, meditation, and I was thinking of actually mindfulness and intention. Forming an intention is similar, probably a synonym for prayer work, if we are truly in that place of putting ourselves with that intention rather than just a thought. I think there is a difference to our mind work and our whole being. So, Kathleen, what do you feel is the value of prayer? What are your thoughts?
Oh, well, I just kind of agree with bits and pieces that everyone's saying, or like all of it, actually. Yeah, it's nice to hear different perceptions and words that are used. I love what Simone said, that it's not a formal thing. And for me, it isn't. I don't kind of sit in prayer like all the time. Sometimes I make the space and create a bit more of a sacred space, but, it can be done anywhere. And there is value in it, It just makes us stop as well and think about what's going on and take some time out of that, sometimes those chaotic thoughts, and ask for help. I just feel like we need to know that there are other realms there that can support us, and we do have to ask. I can't just step in. So the value of prayer for me is asking for that help. There's no pride in that,
And the saying, if you don't ask, how can you expect to receive?
Yeah. Well, they say, we have free will, but our guides don't. So we need to speak to them. They need it's like permission. It's like a permission slip, so to speak.
Yeah. Then
Kathleen, you had something else to say?
Oh, no, I was just going to say permission to, maybe somehow, get the guidance that we need. It's not about asking for them to fix it for us. It's just really creating a space where we're open to different signs that help us go in a different direction maybe, or make a different choice. I'm finished now.
Thank you.
I think we're all responding to Helen's question, right, about what are the other names of prayer. I think if I can paraphrase Helen and slightly change it to say what are some of the other definitions of prayer, I would say that prayer is sometimes almost like self-affirmation, in that it's talking to the higher self rather than an external angel or guide or something else. It's more sort of tapping into the higher self, or can be. So these types of self-affirmation sorts of things could be communicating with our higher self and likened to prayer.
Yeah, and for me, I suppose I have both formal and informal attention to prayer that I do practice in a particular religion, and I find that that's quite affirming, and it puts me in that space of directing all my attention along with in community. I'm not necessarily, suggesting that all the rituals that go hand in hand with some religions or even my religion is what I necessarily, adhere to. But just having that sacred space in community of being in prayer to what I believe is a higher source, a higher wisdom than myself. And then, so that's my formal, once a week, if you like. But also part of the formal practice of prayer for me is very much in nature, tuning into nature. I find that very prayerful to walk on the beach. I don't know if that's formal or informal, because it's almost like a ritual that if I'm in need of reaching out or feeling sustained in some way, I go to the outdoors. I go to the beach, and water in particular, the ocean. So, and then the mindfulness, being mindful, and the gratitude that's tied up in that is prayerful for me. I see that as, and I like to see that my life is a prayer. That's how I like to live my life, that it is in line with what I would like to think of as Vin talking about that higher self. And, I don't always get there. I don't always act in that way. But that's my aim. So prayer is kind of throughout. It's filtered in many levels. It's kind of a constant in my life, I think.
I've just posted in a definition that I just typed into Google prayer, and it gave me the definition that I've pasted there. Because prayer
request.
Prayer really does have it's sort of it has connotations of religion, and when people say, "Do you pray?" I think a lot of people would say no, because they don't want to be considered religious, because they may not be religious, but they may still be doing some kind of thing that may be defined as prayer.
Yeah. Well, I'll just read the other comments I got back on Facebook. So in line with, how other people perceive it. One person said, if prayer worked, we'd have preachers in hospitals and not doctors and surgeons and nurses. And another person said, snake oil, do not buy it. And another person said, about as useful as a get well soon card. And I actually wrote back and said, is it possible that get well cards have some effect? And then the response from that is, I believe they do. It gives people hope. Without hope, people give up. So
That's
that
great.
was an interesting moving through to come up with what I thought was a fairly different response to the initial one.
I love it how people...
We have a preacher, so anyway, just saying.
Sorry, I missed that, Pete.
I was saying most hospitals do have a preacher, so just saying.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that they try to sort of diminish or negate prayer by saying, it's just as good as a get well card. And it's like, well, actually, that's a valuable thing.
I thought it was worth checking out. Do they have any value whatsoever? So Kim has said she's not a big believer in sending good vibes. So that's interesting because, it would seem to be in our belief of separated beings in a world, how could we be sending, an invisible message to somebody in another place and expect to get a result. But I've come to believe that we do it in so many ways. We accept the, you know, the invisible transmission, and we're transmitting here. Where's, like, I'm on wireless, so you guys probably are too. Where's the visible line? And even so, if we opened up that line, where do we actually see the transmission of the data going along it? It is invisible. And so I've come to the belief that there is an invisible energy that does hold data. And why wouldn't that also be contained in us? And I work with energy work, and I know Kathleen does too. I'm guessing Pete does to a certain level. I'm not sure of your medium, Pete, exactly. But I work a lot with the energy work, and we just see amazing changes when we do that work. And how do we know? We actually can't see it, but we know it by the result, how people feel afterwards.
Energy definitely follows thought.
You talked about Kathleen and Pete, but you didn't mention me.
I don't know that you do energy work, do you, Vin?
Yes, he does.
I do. I send, or I enable people to send their energies across the world through the power of the internet.
Yeah, exactly. My first example, and I'm so sorry that I didn't include you, because I was actually talking of the person when I was referring to Pete and Kathleen, and yet you are between people. And so it is, surely surrogate work, you know, that there is an outcome there. There's something to be said for surrogate work.
You were likening the power of healing and prayer to the power of the internet, in that they're both invisible. Yeah. They both enable, the goodness to flower and blossom, and they also cannot be explained by us. You know, someone would respond and say, well, Bill Gates, or, you know, someone could explain it, but someone could explain the spiritual side of things as well. Just because you don't understand it, the same is true of both. And so, you know, I actually called my business Vintuitive, because I believe that the internet is like training wheels for the spiritual side of us. And I think that this communication that we're having right now is part of those training wheels that, once we learn how to connect with each other, say spiritually or psychically, that the need for these training wheels will no longer be required. And you know, if I can just give you a real life example of that, you know, because people are going to think I'm talking crazy now, but you know, when in the old days, when someone would ring and you'd pick up the phone, you think, my goodness, I was just thinking about you. Isn't that an amazing coincidence that you rang? And this would happen often. And so I ended up answering the phone and saying, hey, Dave. And they go, wow, how did you know it was me? And this was before the time of where you could tell what number was ringing you. And, you know, I found that I was right so often that I developed the confidence to just say who was on the other end before they'd even opened their mouth. And I think, you know, the phone line is like that. The phone line is something that can be put aside as like training wheels, because we've developed that mental connection.
Yeah. I think I got very interested in this when I was doing my psych studies, and we were looking at other alternative healing methods, and almost disrespected healing methods. They certainly went mainstream. And there was a study by Daniel Benor, and it's quite old now. It probably was done in the 90s. But it was a prayer study, and it was done in a hospital. But Kathleen can join us again. And they had a group of... Come on in, Kathleen, if you can. They had a group of... Oh, okay. We just
Oh,
yeah.
Still see her.
Yeah. So the coronary patients were divided into two groups, and one group were being prayed for, and another group were not being prayed for. And the result of the study showed that the experimental group, so the group that was being prayed for over, I can't even remember the period of time, but it would have been a number of weeks, several weeks of prayer being dedicated, so intention, direct intention and focus for the healing or the good health or the better outcomes for these coronary patients actually showed better results. They did have better outcomes, better health outcomes than the patients that weren't prayed for. So I'm thinking, oh my goodness, that was a real eye-opener for me. And I'm thinking, what? This doesn't happen in the world of science. Yeah.
I really think, for me personally, I believe that the modern medical mechanism, which I'm totally medical friendly, by the way, I think it's simply a way for us to wrap our brains around the idea that health is possible. All the mechanics that we have, and all the doctors and nurses and the medicines and the billion-dollar machines and whatever it is. We just simply have to have the ability to actually project in our minds that we can be healthy, that we can attain health. And I think that's really what that really is kind of for. And I'm not trying to discount any doctors or any medical. I think that's totally necessary. And who says that God or spirit doesn't work through those mechanisms to bring health?
Yeah, I totally agree. Kathleen, I'm going to shut it out, and if you come back in, would that work for you to see if we can get you back in?
I still hear. Okay.
Yeah, she was there for me.
Oh, was she?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
However, I meant to point out to her, I'm not following her. Like, of course, I followed Kathleen, but it's saying that I'm not following her. It's Kathleen. You're presented as a white person, like I'm not even following you.
Yeah.
Aw,
Yeah.
I thought you'd be following me, Vin. We've been friends for a while now.
I think Blab unfollowed me or something.
Well, I hope everyone's following everyone in this room, and I include all the people who are adding comments and who have turned up, because there's some common ground here, and I think it's wonderful when we can come together and share common ground and common interest in conversations. So
there's some discussion. There's some discussion going on the side about Jesus being is he God? Is he the Son of God? Is he the only one that can heal? I was really interested from what Pete said at the beginning, that in Psalms it says that we're all gods. I mean, I thought that sounded a little bit like blasphemy in the eyes of a Christian, because they believe that we're not as powerful as Jesus, because he was the Son of God and we aren't, and he can heal and we can't. And I'd love to know more about that, Pete. Do you?
Well, actually, Jesus said that we're going to do as much as he did and more. And many people actually accept Jesus as more of a brother energy. And we are called forth. Jesus was supposed to be more of an example of what we can be, but he actually absolutely said that we would do as he did, and we would be able to do even more. So that's why, personally, I've been calling forth a lot more healing work for myself to be able to do. And one of the major things that I've had to actually do is to not judge my own healing work and realize that the person that's being healed, there's actually 3 tenets to wanting to be healed. Number 1, you have to want to be healed, and healing only happens up to the point of where you're able to accept it. Number 2, you have to have the faith that you're healed. And number 3, you have to be real careful about who you tell you're healed, because there's a lot of bubble poppers out there. If you have this really great idea about a business concept, or you meet this really great guy or gal that you want to date, you have to be real careful about who you tell, because somebody's going to be like, oh, but and that's the same thing with healing. And that's basically what Jesus would tell people, those 3 things. You have to be able to accept it, you have to have the faith, and you have to be careful about who you tell. But yes, we're called forth to do even greater works than Jesus did.
I said a very strong. Sorry.
No, go, Kathleen.
I was just going to say, I set a very strong intention in my space. You know, even if people feel a little bit resistant or a little bit cynical about stuff, healing still happens on some level. Because I think sometimes their higher self wants it more than their physical self.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got that kind of permission or there's that intention set, it happens on some level. It might be subtle, might be, you know, might not be as deep or quick as people that are very open to it, but I still do believe healing happens.
You know,
Can I just ask Pete, only because I was brought up a Catholic. I never read the Bible. You know, I got read stories out of it through school, and, you know, I know little bits and pieces here and there. But Kim was just asking you, Pete, what verse you were talking about, because she'd like to read it.
Oh,
John 14:12.
I can do a quick search for it, but it's in Psalms.
Yeah. Psalms. Okay, sorry. Yeah, just because Kim's kind of had been having a discussion, so I didn't want to overlook that question. Sorry, Vin, go for it.
It's just that someone just posted in John 14:12. I'm not sure if that's relevant to what Pete was saying. But
I'm gamey. I'll look it up. I'm not scared.
All right. Verily, I'll read it to you. Verily, I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these, because I am going to the Father. There you go. You know, I often think of Jesus as not as a historical character, but more like the sage in the Tao Te Ching.
Yeah.
So the Tao Te Ching teaches, you know, the sage does this. In other words, to say the wise man does this, or if you are wise, you will do this. And so I often think that Jesus is really just a character, like the sage is just a character. The sage in the Taoist text doesn't really exist. It's just, you know, a role that you would follow. And I think Jesus was exactly that, and was the role that we should follow. Whether or not he existed as a historical character is secondary, I think, and doesn't really take away from the fact that you can interpret all of the biblical texts as talking about Jesus as a role that you should follow. As he said, I am the way.
I think that's an important point, because you see a lot of people, especially, you know, Christians, and I live in the South, so I can say Bible thumpers. You know, God doesn't need you to go out and defend him. I mean, if God is really powerful, and if Jesus really was, and he's really powerful, he doesn't need you to go out and like kill people and defend him with them. He's good. But I was just going to say that Psalms 82:6 is the one that says you are God's, just in case anybody's wanting. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, I tend to believe that Jesus did exist, but I think it's kind of, I tend to agree with you, Vin. It really is. As long as we take the example, the story that's there, that's the important part. You know what I mean?
But putting Jesus above us and saying that we can't do the things that Jesus did, I think that's really missing the entire point. And if we're going to put Jesus above ourselves and say that we're not like him, then we're lost. We've lost the whole message of the Bible.
But aren't we all like God? Aren't we all of God and have God within?
Children.
You know?
And I think
Psalms 82:6.
I think that was the purpose of the story of Jesus, or Jesus present on earth, that he was human, so just like us, but there's an attainment of the divine, and so that's what we can attain as well. And I was in Brisbane a few weeks ago now, listening to a talk by Wayne Dyer and Anita Moorjani, who wrote the beautiful book Dying to Be Me. Now, Anita almost died. She experienced the other realm, as she says. Her book is beautiful. I highly recommend it for everyone. It's a classic. It's now being turned into a film. So Dying to Be Me is the title. So Anita was telling us her experience of being on the other side, and she knew exactly why she got cancer, which was her dying point, if you like. She was about to be pronounced dead. She was in a coma for I don't know how many days. And she came back into her body, but she knew when she came back that the cancer would leave her, because she knew it was all fear-based, and she knew that she was just this beautiful person of light. just like everyone is. And when somebody in the audience, I think, or Wayne Dyer said, so what's God like on the other side? You know, what's God like? And what's God look like? That's right. That was the question. And she said, he looks like you. And then she pointed to the audience, and he looks like you. And he looks like you. And that's God. It's just this amazing light, and it's within us all. And we are all this light. And of course, the name of the weekend that I attended was called I Am Light.
Beautiful.
So I think that was Jesus as well. You know, he was able to live that level of being, you know, I am light. And that's, I suppose, the challenge for all of us in a way.
I love that. And I love this subject because I just actually did a webinar tonight on perfect angelic health. So I'm really enjoying this one tonight.
So
great that
I'm going to jump out because I think maybe someone else might be able to jump in just to bring a little bit more perspective into the conversation. But I'll hang about and listen, of course.
Yeah, thanks, Kathleen. Thanks so much.
Kathleen.
I'll do the same if anyone in the audience wants to jump in.
Have we got? Feel free to jump in. This is not going to be unending. I pretty well have a time limit on my blabs because I think time is precious for people, and I like to keep it under the hour. So when it gets to the hour mark, I'm looking to wind up. So we're sitting at about 12:40 now, Darwin time and Adelaide time and down under. So what time is it where you are, Pete?
It's right after 10 p.m.
Oh, wow. And whereabouts are you?
I'm in North Alabama, right in the middle of the Bible Belt.
Okay. Thanks, Kathleen. Beautiful comment. Yeah.
She's calling me her new follower.
Yeah. So I'm wondering then if prayer does have value, and with all we are all suggesting it does have value, how do we do it? I suppose that's the next thing, then the next question. How do you? How do you pray? What's it look like? What's it feel like? What's it sound like?
Well,
you going to go, Ben?
Yeah, but I have nothing fresh or new to add. I would just repeat or restate in another way, perhaps, what I said before, is that for me, the most effective prayer is to myself or to my higher self. So it would be very much like a self-affirmation. If I were asking the universe something, then it would be much the same. I think there's a hesitancy to verbalize prayer. I think a lot of people maybe embarrassed or think they don't need to, but I very strongly think that it needs to be actually verbalized to be effective.
Mm-hmm. I would tend to agree. I think you can do it in your head, but we are told that God spoke forth, like I said before, the universe and the planets and the heavens, and that like I said in Psalms 82:6 says we are God. So I do think that the power of our words has so much to that as well. And I think you can be in a constant state of prayer. That's when people often ask me, so how do you connect with the angels? And I tell them by talking to them all the time, by including them, because we're the ones that give things meaning. We're the ones that think a button is small and a castle is large. To them, it's just packets of energy. So to them, there's no reason why we shouldn't ask for everything from a parking space to perfect angelic healing to having enough money to pay for your groceries. To them, there's no difference in any of those different wants or desires that we have.
That plays out in what we know in the work of NLP, neuro-linguistic processing, when we work with people that when they actually express their thoughts, when they verbalize them, they can become more intense in the feeling or in the experience. And it's no different in a sense that people know their story. They've always known their story. It's always stuck in their head, wherever it sits in their being. But once they begin to tell the story, it has a whole different effect on them. It can have them express tears. It can get them angry. It can send different energy through the body. And so I think that goes hand in hand with prayer work being expressive in some way, needing to be expressed. We need to articulate it. We need to verbalize it to actually put ourselves in the zone as much as we can of that prayer, of that intention. Because it can be stuck in the back of my head. I can know that, I want to be able to work with a whole group of people in helping them heal from some serious conditions. And I can kind of know that. But if I don't articulate it, it mightn't go any further than staying inside my head. And once we articulate it, then I think we can get into that point. Someone mentioned it before, probably Helen, I think, mentioned the word co-create. And I think that's our job. We do have a responsibility if we want to be part of our creation and the way our life looks. And somewhere in the Bible, and I know Vin's read the Bible, so he'll be able to tell me where probably, but the quote, and it might not even be in the Bible, but pray like it all depends on God and work like it all depends on you. Actually, I think it was one of the saints. I think it was St. Augustine when I say that. And so that is that co-creation. And if we keep the thought, the prayer of what we really have ambition to do or to achieve or to attract into our lives, if it remains stuck in our head, we're probably not doing our part of the good work in moving it forward to be able to attract it into our lives.
I was going to say something of a similar thing, that when we have a thought, it's the beginning of something, to create something or to do something in the world. All actions start with a thought. And so, prayer is similar. I think that it may be effective to non-verbalize it and just keep it as a thought. And I do think it is effective, but I think it's more effective to verbalize it. And it's sort of like you can think of building a bridge or something big. All starts with a thought, and then it gets verbalized, whether it's written down or verbalized, and then it gets built upon, but it all starts with the thought in the head. And Kathleen's actually said something there about journaling, and she says the written word as well for me. I feel like journaling is a way of prayer for me, sharing my thoughts and getting clarity. And that's so true. When you write down something or when you speak something, you need to clarify it. And so it actually gives it credibility or substance or reality if it's structured in that process of either speaking or writing it.
I think that's so important, because so many times with clients, I ask them, do you know what it is that you want? And they say yes. And I tell them, well, I want you to tell me so clearly that I can envision it. And then when they start speaking it, they find out how murky it really is. And it is speaking it forward and it's writing it down that makes you really clarify exactly what it is that you want. Because if we are truly callers forth of all that there is, if we don't even know what we're calling forth, then what good is it, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a part of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, if I'm sure you've read that, but he says, sort of a similar thing that, I just forgot my thought. Sorry, what were you saying?
About calling it forth, about being really, really clear and focused in your intent.
Yeah, that's it. Like he'll say to someone, what is it? I want to be rich. Well, really? How rich? Oh, I want $1 million. So what do you want to do with that $1 million? I don't know. I'll probably buy a house, a car, I'll go on a holiday. and it's like, well, that doesn't cost $1 million. That costs $29,000 and plus this, and they haven't really thought about it. So they're just sort of picking a number and they're saying, oh, I want $1 million, but they don't actually want $1 million. They want, they don't even know what they want, so they're never going to get it. And it's only when you clarify and write down and keep clarifying it and keep making it as tight and as accurate and as real as possible that it actually works. And then, the universe follows through and you end up with the $297,000 or whatever it is you needed.
Yeah, I think the add-in point here is the set of beliefs that we hold about ourselves as well. So we can become clear on what we want to attain and draw into our lives. And then there are the buts. But that will never happen to me. So we can get very clear, and I think that's absolutely important what Pete said, and to keep getting people to specify, get that clarity. And then I think the next step is, what are the buts in here? And whatever follows in the buts, there's work to be done there about, yes, Kathleen, our worthiness, whether we deserve it, whether I'm good enough, I'm smart enough. An example is I was starting up my psych business here in Darwin, and I had a real block about kicking off. I had the business name and I had done everything I needed to do to set up. And I thought, but how are people going to know that I'm here? And I knew I was holding back because I actually didn't want them to know that I was here. Mm. And why didn't I want them to know I was here? Well, my husband has been involved in politics. And so he's out there. And we have campaign posters on our fence. And I thought, no one will want to come and see me when they've seen campaign posters sitting on our fence for whatever party it is. And I had such fear around people, no one will pick me. I'm in the wrong place. I've got the wrong location because I have an office space from home. And that I had to do a lot of work on that to actually pull that out of the system. If they want to come to me, they're coming to see me, not my husband. My husband's, has a different life, a different agenda going on, and he's, in a different world in a sense. But I had to actually get past that because I had a very clear intention. I was starting a psych business. I knew where I was doing it. I knew how I was doing it. I had all the tools. I even had the sign for the gate, but I wouldn't put it up. And so it was that belief that was actually getting in the way. I had all this clarity of thought, but it was my belief that got in the way. And so all the good prayer work and all the good intention work was not going to go anywhere until I cleared out this belief that was getting in the way.
Mm.
I think I know I hate to bring every conversation back to Blab, but I think it's that reflection that gives us the confidence. Like I've seen in the last week, a lot of people saying things like, listen to what other people say about you. When they give you a compliment, listen to that and pay attention to what it is they're saying, because that's what you are good at, and that's what people are seeing in you that is good. And you have to listen to them and take it on board, because you are sometimes your worst enemy, and the lack of confidence can kill you. So I think it's very important to listen to what people are saying to you when they pay you a compliment, because it's direct feedback. And on the Blab, I've just noticed so many people saying so many things about me that I didn't think of, and I didn't credit myself as being good at or having this trait. So I think it's important to bounce off other people.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay, I'm looking at the time and it's like 10 minutes off the hour. Are there any last bits of wisdom, guidance, thoughts, insights on prayer, Pete, that you have?
Well, what I always tell people, it's almost a 4-step. Number 1, have a clear intention and focus on what you want. Then I want you to step into joy, take inspired action, and walk in faith.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful. And then, anything more?
Well, I was always told, as I was actually raised as a Christian as a child, and I remember one of the most important things to yeah, it is ending, Mark, but you're welcome to jump in for the last 10 minutes and give us your thoughts. Yeah. But when I was a kid and I was learning about these things and prayer, I was told the number one rule of prayer is that you never start by asking. You start by thanking and showing your gratitude and stating what it is that you are grateful for, and then ask.
Yeah, and there's that saying that if you're not grateful for what you have now, what makes you think you would be grateful for anything more?
That's true.
Yeah.
So, welcome, Mark. Thanks for jumping in.
Thank you,
What are your thoughts on the value of prayer? What do you feel?
And hi, Vin. I know Vin well. It's nice to meet the rest of you. Probably a different perspective than you folks here, but I feel like this is welcoming and safe to bring here. I was a evangelical Christian believer for over 30 years.
Wow.
Long story, but I no longer am, and no longer a believer in any particular gods. So I don't pray. I don't think it does anything. I don't think it does anything harmful. I understand the sentiment of it. I understand that it makes people feel, because we feel very helpless in the world. We feel like there are forces bigger than we are that we're not in control of. And so we want to have some control of them. We want to believe that there's magic that will come into play. I just don't see any evidence for that one way or the other. There's been empirical tests that show that prayer doesn't have any effect whatsoever over above anything else. Everybody that says it does is based on anecdotes, which can't be proven. So that's fine. That doesn't mean like I'm not anti people who pray. It just means that I understand the sentiment. I understand, like, when Facebook, when somebody says my child is sick, my mother is ill, I'm sick, please pray. And you want to feel like you can say something beyond that's terrible. So we all want to say, like, I'm praying for you. And it sounds like you're doing something. So that's where I come from these days. Very much different position than I used to have, but that's where I am.
Mark, earlier you said that there's no evidence for the miracles happening as a result of prayer, but earlier in this blab I did articulate that a prayer study that was actually done as a scientific research, where patients were prayed for in the coronary unit of a hospital. One set of patients were prayed for and the other ones weren't. And the ones that were prayed for had better health outcomes in regards to their coronary conditions. So
I'd love to see that. Did you put a link to that study?
Yeah, it's just there.
Did you get it? Then?
It's in the chat. Someone has posted. Jonathan posted.
To YouTube?
Yeah.
Look, it was so long ago that I did it. It was in my studies that I don't know if it's peer reviewed.
I'd want to know that, because there's a lot of things that people say are studies. There's a lot of studies that are done, but if they're not done under the right circumstances, under the scientific controls, because I've seen the peer-reviewed studies that have been done, and they do not have that result.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Jonathan's link to study statement was actually a question.
He's asking for that. I would love to see it.
Study nearby.
Mm-hmm. And then you'd have to, for it to be valid, you would not only have to have one study that might have a certain result, but it would have to be replicated, right? and others would have to be able to replicate it. The methodology would have to be clear enough and explicit enough that it could be replicated.
Well, and I just want to say I see great value in this, because I think it's wonderful that there's this many different viewpoints. And so I think, Mark, you're in this space and time right now for a particular reason, to really call us forth to, because it's when we're really questioned about our faith, and when we're really questioned about what we believe, that we decide how solid we are in it, whether we are or not. You really find the people that argue the most for their viewpoint are the ones that actually believe the least in it. So, I mean, where you are is the space for your truth, and I honor that and cherish that for you. I get from you a sense that you honor and cherish where everybody else is in their walk too. So brother, I just want to say I commend you on that. I think that's a wonderful space to be, and there's a reason why you are where you are.
Well, there certainly are reasons why we're all where we are. Right. And again, my purpose is not to try to come in and dissuade, here's a bunch of some silly, ignorant people. I just came in to bring a different perspective that there isn't. I will, the only time that you'll get as you just saw, you get my hackles up a little bit, is when people claim that, there's scientific evidence, there's a study somewhere that turns out to be, a one-off or an anecdotal. If you really understand how science works, and science is so important, this is what has become the center of my life, because it's the only means that we have to verify anything and to arrive at anything that approaches the truth. Everything else is feelings and intuitions, and I understand that. I understand the human need for that. But to say, I believe in prayer because one time I prayed and Aunt Gert got better, or there's this one-off supposed study somewhere, that's just not genuine. That's not sincere. I don't mean you're not sincere, but you shouldn't base it on that. You should be honest and say, my friend Jonathan Wilson, who's in the chat here, terms it very well, is that we will all come to a better place if we would all admit that we are essentially agnostic. There are the things that are beyond us, we don't know with a certainty. Now, I know and I understand the arguments that, faith is a different kind of knowing. And that, when you have the faith, then you see, but that's not verifiable. It's not empirically verifiable. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So I'd have to bring in here the new science, if you like, which is quite, old now, of quantum physics, which is actually showing amazing relationships between what we have believed is our knowing in the physical sense and the energy that exists of our unknowing as well. And, Einstein identified this.
I will certainly say that the universe, quantum physics has shown us that the universe is much more mysterious than we thought it was. But when you start equating that, when you start talking vaguely about energy with that, you're not talking in scientific terms. You're not talking verifiable terms. We're getting into Deepak Chopra stuff here, then it's nonsense. It's not scientific. It's not at all what physicists are talking about when they talk about what happens at the quantum level. And then people are trying to extrapolate that out because Newtonian physics doesn't work at the quantum level. It does not mean that we are all quantum, that we are all energy, and that we influence, our thoughts influence things. That's interesting. I love speculating about that as much as anybody. It's fascinating.
But it actually does, Mark. It is true that the thoughts influence your actions. And as I said before, I'm not sure if you were here for my definition of what prayer is, but I think with anything, we have to start by defining. And that's what we started with defining what prayer means. And to say that it doesn't work, well, is just is not really using the rigid scientific method that you want us to do, because first of all, you need to just very clearly define what it is you're discounting or trying to prove. So, when I gave my definition of prayer, it was simply self-affirmation. And to say that self-affirmation doesn't work is just flat wrong. It does work.
That's something different, but that's self-affirmation.
Well, is it different? Is it different? That's how I define prayer. So for me, prayer is exactly that. And so prayer works in that sense.
Okay.
So it depends how you define what prayer is.
Right. I agree with that. Right. So if you want to call that prayer, that's fine. But that's not prayer like saying, if I get 75 people on Facebook to pray for Aunt Mary, that she'll have a better chance of getting better. That's not self-affirmation. That's saying that somehow our thoughts or our, can influence and change something in the physical world.
Well, we don't know that can't work.
We don't know it can't, right? But you can never start from that. I don't know that I can't have a thought and I make the moon move 10 feet closer to the Earth. I don't know that. I don't think it's very likely, but I can't prove it. But you can't just say, like, because you can't prove it, therefore it's a thing, and we all need to have blabs about it.
So just drawing your attention to Pensiv's comments in the side, science has proven that all atoms are energy, and everything. I remember learning in my science days of high school 1,000 years ago that everything was energy. We had the teacher just thump on the blackboard and we had to chant, that blackboard has energy, this pencil has energy, da, 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 da. But what we didn't chant was that we have energy. And I always thought it was curious that we as animate items, objects in the world, were the only things that didn't have energy in our chant, and all these inanimate things had energy. And I think now science, has proven that everything, Einstein said it, everything is molecules, atoms, working in whatever way. And so, I love a quote of Einstein's. He said, science without religion is lame, and religion without science is blind. And I think that talks to me that we actually have to have both. We can't leave one hanging and pretend that it's all prayer. Come on, let's all just pray and forget about the science of the world and how it's the physics that are allowing the world to roll on as it does. It's bringing it together to say, let's be smart about this. Let's take on board science, and let's say, allow for all the things we don't know that are out there.
As Jonathan says, he has evidence that prayer works and that it does not work. You can't make meaningful claims about this. No,
and I was simply quoting a study. I'm not suggesting that it is. I was saying a study has been done where they found this, and I put the source in the comments there.
The only thing I would disagree, and I appreciate that, Margaret, and I share a lot of your sentiments. I really do. I think the only thing that I would disagree with is that that I need religion somehow, or I'm incomplete, because I know by religion, I'm not meaning organized religion. I'm meaning the sense of faith, that I need to, because it might work, or because there, it might be out there, that I should spend time praying for things to come. I would rather spend my time investing in improving myself and in actions that have things in the real world that have, that I know can have an effect, not something that I wish had an effect.
Yeah. And you sound exactly like my husband. he's a sworn agnostic or atheist, and he's a doer. Let's get on and do it. And so somehow we're compatible because I have a strong belief in this other world of prayer and the higher wisdom that we live in, and that's part of all of us as well.
I think the only thing that I would want to leave with tonight, and is not, again, and I apologize if at some points I sound like I was trying to, tear down your belief or say it has no basis or it has no importance to you, because I don't think that, and I do respect it. Why I came in here tonight, and I do a lot of blabs on this purpose, is just to say that I think it's important for people of faith and religion to realize that there are people who have no faith, who reject the need for any faith, who live very good and effective lives and very complete and fulfilling lives. And I think that's, and I'm saying that I don't think any of you necessarily think that, but we encounter a lot of people who assume that if you don't believe, you're in despair, that you're immoral or likely to be immoral, all those kinds of things. It's just not true.
Well, I referred to my husband, and he would have to be the most moral person I know to a fault. And he is such a good-hearted man and does so much for the community. I mean, I just can't say, I'll be the last person to say that people who have no faith, if you like, or no prayer life are not, and somebody put in the comments, right or wrong, could I be wrong? And my comment back is there a right or wrong in this? I don't see it like that. I see that we are all here and we all have our personal beliefs, whatever they are. And I'm totally respectful of my husband who has no belief and everyone else. Of course, there's amazing people out there doing just wonderful, wonderful work. And I see them all the time. And they have no faith or no prayer. It's so what, it doesn't stop the good work that they're doing.
Then we're on the same heartbeat. I appreciate that. I'm going to drop out. I know I've kept you over what you intended to stay, and I really,
really welcome that you came in, Mark. Really appreciate it, and for sharing your views, because they're all worthy. All of our views are worthy to be heard and need to be heard, and that's the way we develop our own tolerance. The bottom line of what the world's missing. That we have little tolerance for people that don't have the same beliefs as us, and hopefully we can break that down.
Well, this is the technology that we're in here, and this is why I spend so much time here, and so many of us do. It can be just an entertainment, it can be a light fluff, or it can be this. And I think this is where it rises to its highest level, that we are getting this chance to speak with people that we would not normally come across in our everyday life. We get to know, we become less the other, capital O other, and more human. And that's a wonderful thing. So thank you so much.
Thanks,
love to all of you very much.
Yeah.
See you around.
Thank you, Mark.
If I can just encourage you people to follow each other. I know that everyone says that, but Mark is, Mark, before he dropped out, I wanted to say to him that I'd known him for a long time on Google+, but I'd known him as the tech business guy, and I never knew anything about his sort of personal stuff. And it's only on Blab in the last few days that I've known this other side of Mark, and we've had long, deep conversations with Jonathan, Pensive, Helen. I'm not sure if Mark and Jonathan have connected with Pensive and Helen, but that's why I'm sort of encouraging you all to follow each other. And Margaret, if you're not following Helen, Pensive, and Jonathan and Mark, you really, really should. And also you, Pete, if you were interested in these longer, deeper conversations, because some of the conversations, Margaret, Jonathan was the guy I was telling you about yesterday, who started his first blab, I think, was like a 5-hour blab. And then the next one was like 3 hours. Very, very deep, very really interesting stuff. So, I can't speak highly enough of the whole gang here.
Well, I'm so pleased. I'm very happy to run over the hour to have Mark to come on in and share his views. So that was fantastic, and thanks, Mark, for doing that. So on that note, I'll wind up for today, and again, we'll have spiritual conversations next Friday, same time, and love you all to join in. In the meantime, just a little bit about each of us, and we well, we didn't get Kathleen and Mark's details, but just in case you wanted to follow up, I'm always happy to have a conversation off the blab as well, or any comments. So my website is margaretlambert.com, and you can find me on an email through there. So, and Vin, if you want to give your details, in case anyone wanted to follow up.
I am Vin Brown. I have a business called Vintuitive, and that's why you can see that as my handle. If you want to follow me on Twitter or anywhere else on the internet, I am Vintuitive.
Thanks. And Pete?
Oh, and what do I do? I'm a web developer and I do training sessions.
Pete, are you with us? I'm not seeing you now.
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much. You can find me at probably the best place is facebook.com, The Angel Encourager. I'm an angel intuitive medium. You can also reach me at theangelencourager@gmail.com.
Okay. And I gave you my website, margaretlambert.com, but I actually didn't tell you what I do. I'm a psychologist, author, and speaker. Very happy to take any comments, questions, any follow-up at all. Love to have you all join in next week's Spiritual Conversations. Otherwise, I do a Wellbeing Weekly on a Wednesday at around the same time. And next week, I haven't set the conversation for Spiritual Conversations next Friday, but my Wellbeing Weekly next week is EFT, Emotional Freedom Techniques. So if you want to come and hear about that, or if you've got some stories to share about working with the energy in health and healing, please join on that Wednesday session. So thanks, everyone, for joining in. I'll hit the stop on the recording now and hope to catch you